My guest on today's episode is my favorite host on Two-Way, Dan Turtine, hosts the morning meeting and the group chat. He's a veteran Democrat Politico. Dan, thank you for being here.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on.
You're my favorite host because you show up, you look the part, you want the job, like you're there every day. Sean's got the sun in his face. He just like Mark looks like he came from golfing. You don't know, like Sean's like walking half the time. You're actually fully there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Dan is the man who showed up for work, and I always appreciate that.
Well,
Um,
thank you. Thank you. I try.
yeah. Dan, so Democrats are looking pretty good ahead of the upcoming elections in 2 weeks. They're likely to retain the New York mayor's race, redraw the map in California, pick up the governor's election in Virginia by a pretty good margin. And then they have a healthy but not outstanding lead
Yeah.
in the New Jersey governor's race. And yet at the same time, and the New York Times wrote about this, the main focus for all these politicians is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
How much has Donald Trump, as much as defined the Republican Party, how much has he defined the Democratic Party?
100%. For the last 10 years, I mean, go back to Hillary Clinton in 2016 at the end of that election when she really was just trying to disqualify him as much as she was trying to pump herself up. And ever since then, the focus has been on this kind of idea that it's a fever dream, that if we just scream hard enough, find the next indictment, the next wrongdoing, the next inappropriate comment or, meme on X, that the voters will say, my gosh, we made such a horrendous mistake. We can't believe we did this. Even the No Kings rally, it is still to this day this idea of an obsession with the man, his character, his conduct. What has just never happened really, and still, much to my frustration and others, the party really has never stepped back and said, why is he so popular? Why has he won? Why is it, Ryan, in my lifetime, and I love politics, you can see the books behind me, I don't think any politician that I know of has started a movement and 10 years on been more powerful with the movement, the size of the movement, than when it started. Usually, like Obama in '08, after a year or less of governing, it gets messy. It starts to, kind of come apart at the seams. Why is he so successful? And that just, instead it's just be a little louder and a little harsher and a little nastier and all will end.
Yeah, and it's also the fact is the No Kings rally. I mean, it wasn't all old people, but it was a
Yep.
lot of senior citizens at this rally, and it's a lot of people who have almost a generational psychosis from watching MSNBC and CNN nonstop, who have been told this is a dictator, this is Hitler, this
Yep.
man's evil, yada yada yada. And the tragic part for the Democratic Party is that on several, it's not every issue, but on a bunch of issues, they are way more trusted than Republicans.
Yep.
Healthcare, abortion, a number of things like that. And it's kind of all gone by the wayside. Is there any like thought leader within the Democratic Party who's really got their finger on the pulse of new ideas and policies that are going to be, advantageous for the average working class American?
The sad thing is there are factions within the House and the Senate. There are people thinking about running for 2028. The problem is there is still this fear of both being canceled on social issues and offending the base on the kind of broader substantive issues. And the ultimate example, Ryan, is crime, right? When Trump sent in the National Guard, the first response was, well, crime isn't that bad, which was insanity to try to, argue that away. What Trump proposed is a short-term solution, right? The National Guard cannot stay everywhere forever. At some point, you have to kind of manage your own house. Rather than saying, okay, we're going to challenge you now. How about another 100,000 new police officers nationwide? How about pumping up the budgets and let's redo bail laws, which, by the way, we're still paying the price for. But they just said, no, there's no problem. No, there's nothing to see. Like, we just abdicated the playing field and something is preferred to nothing. And I think that is where Trump so often, not only is he on the right side of issues, but even where people kind of squirm at his tactics and, he goes full throttle. It's like, he's doing something on immigration. He's doing something on crime. He's doing something on free trade. He's doing something to try to end the war in Ukraine. And all we do is sit there and attack the man and the process and wave it away. And voters say, I won't even listen to anything you have to say anymore.
Yeah, and you saw, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a candidate running for US Senate in Michigan named Haley Stevens, and
Oh yeah, know her well. Yep.
she wrote an article I think 2 years ago saying send in the National Guard to the cities, and her having to try to back. She's running one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen in
Yeah.
Democratic politics. She did an event recently. I think two people showed up, and one was her tracker. So I mean, that's I've been on a lot of campaign events which are rough. That
Yeah.
is rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, who would you say are like thought leaders that are like, okay, this person's having an interesting conversation on tech, which is, a
Yeah.
huge part of our future is AI. It's like completely, we're sleeping on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like other things that who are some people you could point to and say, this is a person who's having a thoughtful conversation whose name does not rhyme with Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, first off, the thought leadership energy is with the Bernie Sanders AOC wing and Mandani, which is a problem I think I'm sure we'll get to at some point here. The one who I think not only is putting the thought into, but is beginning to actually publicly start getting into this is Rahm Emanuel. I think Rahm, he's got his warts, he's got his problems within the party and different factions. But Rahm is beginning to go out there and listen to people, understand their frustrations. He's written a little bit about kind of on cultural issues where we were wrong. He said it. Now the fact that he has to then self-deprecatingly say, I'm going to go into the witness protection program tells
So
you where, he knows he's in the deep end of the pool. But Rahm is, I actually think people like Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro are doing it or they're going to do it with a show, not kind of tell. Meaning they're going to say, look at what I've done in our states, right? I worked with Trump to protect the Great Lakes. Or Shapiro, hey, look, I got a bunch of Republicans to vote for me because I don't criticize them. I'm willing to work with them and say where they're right. So there are, but generally speaking, a lot of people are very, very cautious because they look around and you got people like J.B. Pritzker and others who are saying we have nothing to apologize for, right? Again, we need to be louder. We need to be more direct, right? And just go right at Trump. And to me, I believe that it will ultimately, as it has been for 10 years, is a losing proposition.
what's so funny is because I still consult on campaigns. I'm doing a statewide race right now, and I've done, I don't know, a million at this point. And like I've told people, uh, I even told JD right before I started working on the super PAC for his Senate race, like the lesson to take away from Trump from his 2016 campaign is not to be, boisterous on social media, for lack of a better word, but to challenge party orthodoxy when it's unpopular. Like
Yep.
Trump on abortion, Trump on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He basically took the entire Paul Ryan platform and smashed it into little bits because no one liked it.
Yep.
No one like, I didn't vote for Mitt Romney because Paul Ryan was on the ticket and I thought that he was like a joke. Um like there is unpopular, not that everything Trump says is popular, but there's really unpopular rigid ideology parts of both parties
Yep.
tickets. And the Democrats, even like on the trans issue, which is not the most important issue, as Winsome Sears is going to experience in 2 weeks, it is a very much an 80-20 issue that they are still not knowing what to sit there and say. It reminds you in 2016 of when I forget who was running. Some woman was running for president on the Republican ticket, the woman from California, and they asked her about gay marriage. She's like, I'm for civil unions. I'm like, you are a decade behind where the conversation's
Was
going
that
right now.
Carly Fiorina?
Charlie,
Had that?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And like,
Yes.
because you're so nervous
Yep.
that you are not willing to just go out there and go where the public is. And I feel like Democrats like that for a lot of things: crime, immigration, yada yada yada, trans stuff. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, winning candidates for president usually have as a part of their opening message, here's where my party's wrong, right? So Bill Clinton challenging the party on, ironically, crime, on trade, right, on the economy. Donald Trump challenged it on immigration at the time, right? The Wall Street Journal, everyone, Marco Rubio was all about, the pathway to citizenship. He said, here's where you're wrong on free trade. The forever wars. I remember when Trump went into South Carolina and said the Iraq war was stupid. And everyone was like, aha, that's it. He's going down. And, he wins 70% of the vote. Our party, there's two things. We don't have, other than maybe healthcare or and abortion, any 80-20 issues that are on our side, where we say, the public is with us, Republicans are really on a back foot and are backpedaling. Where has our challenging the status quo? I know people are talking about education. Maybe. Okay, I'm curious. It's a complicated issue. It's a big issue. Like, what facet are you going to pick? But I agree with you. The party has got to pick some issues and disrupt. Right now, because we're so against Trump, Ryan, we have become on issue after issue defending the status quo, the issue and the process, right? Hey, you can't do this. You can't change this. Things aren't that bad on issue after issue is kind of what the party argues. When worldwide the public wants change, they're
Mhm.
not, I mean, Mandani personifies that, right? In our party now, we want change. Primaries of older candidates, we want change. Blowing up the filibuster, changing rules. The base wants change, as does the Republican Party. It's just because they're so afraid of our base, no one is willing to get out there and lead. And I always say this, Trump's secret sauce is substance. As you
Mhm.
say, he challenged the status quo unapologetically and with full force. And that's ultimately what made people say, I'm going to go wait in line for the guy for, 10 hours in the rain in, the Berkshires in 2015.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I keep telling Republicans, like, guys, electricity prices are the new populist issue. Talk about data
Yeah.
centers. It's so important, and they're just missing the boat. Can we just talk about Cuomo for a second?
Sure.
Was he always a terrible candidate, and we just didn't notice because he was anointed into his AG seat and then anointed into the governor's mansion and was in a super blue state, and only Cynthia Nixon challenged him, and she didn't. She had a great campaign ads, but she was an insufferable personality. So, like, was he always just bad, or did he just doesn't, or was he expected to be anointed again?
It's so funny you say this because I asked something very similar in that I watched, as part of my job, the entire debate the other night. And I could not believe how terrible Andrew Cuomo was. Like,
Horrible.
what I know or knew of Andrew Cuomo was this feared politician who carries brass knuckles, destroys his opponent, is ruthless, wins at all costs, is known to be very, quick on his feet and good with a quip. And I saw a guy that was rambling, rigid, had the fact that Mandani had all these slick answers and retorts, and Cuomo walked into, set attacks like against himself, when he tried to use
He couldn't
COVID.
answer on COVID,
No,
which, like,
and look, he was attacked once again on visiting a mosque, which was a huge thing back in his primary, and he still had not rectified it. And you had to know it was coming. What happened was, and I was asked this earlier today, how do we get to having Mandani and Cuomo to choose, and obviously Curtis Lewa? You go back a year, and Cuomo led by about 30 to 40 points. And most Democrats said, okay, I'm not running into that buzzsaw. I actually had a candidate reach out to me and ask to meet. We sat down on a Saturday for about 2 hours. And he wanted to talk about running and what did I think, etc. And one of my first questions was, are you willing to take on Andrew Cuomo? Right? He's going to do whatever he has to do. If you rise, if you're successful, that's good. The bad news is you're on his radar, and here comes the heat-seeking missiles. He ran everybody out, but he won the war before a shot was fired. People just didn't realize how terrible he was going to be actually running for mayor on this kind of rose garden strategy of don't really talk to the press, have like, three or four things, crime and education. And Mandani just had a finger on the pulse and went out and hustled. If people knew that the front runner was going to be a 33-year-old socialist, the number of people who would have run, members of Congress, wealthy people, business people, but it's like in
yeah,
'92, the number of
no,
Democrats who are like, if it's going to be Bill Clinton, I would have run.
I no, it's so true. And a former New York Yankee from like the dynasty era reached out to me about running as a Republican, and I just said, "Listen, Curtis has been hitting the pavement for 5 straight years now. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be tough." But then if you beat him, you got Andrew Cuomo, and he's just gonna be our next mayor. I don't know how to tell
Yeah.
you, and I discourage person from running. I'm like, Cuomo is gonna be impossible to beat. I mean, and I am dumbfounded, just dumbfounded, how, like, I do not like how he handled COVID at all. And he did things that were, I think, vindictive towards the end about keeping things closer too long. However, I was a New York resident when it happened, and people looked for leadership, and the whole country looked at him. And he took a lot of words from Fauci, and he stood in a time of crisis. And right or wrong, he could sit there and say, "I was a leader when the country needed me,
Yep.
and I made mistakes, but I did the best I could." And he couldn't answer that. I could write a better answer. I disagree with you, and like I can't believe how little energy there is. It's this strange dichotomy you're seeing in the Democratic Party as a whole, and it's nationwide. It's Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. They
Yep.
represent a lot of what Democrats traditionally win on, right?
Yep.
Upper middle class to wealthy women who, even though they're of the left, they appear something that moderates can, like
Yep.
and take and look responsible and sound smart. And then you have Zoran,
And
and
military service with both of them.
right,
Another.
right. No,
Yep.
they have credentials behind them. They've got money behind them. There's every that they are. If you said to me, draw a picture of what a
Yep.
Democrat would want to run with, I would draw Abigail Spanberger because, like, it is what they would like. It's like looking at a young Hillary Clinton to a certain degree.
Ooh.
Um, that she, I mean, she is.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I had
She's
not thought of
clearly
it
going to
that
run
way.
for president one
Yep.
day, and I mean, you can tell, you could see the entire arc right there. Um, uh, uh, the thing about that's interesting though is that towards the end of the campaign, Spanberger's doing fine, but she's not as strong as she was a couple of
Yep.
months ago.
Agreed.
And Mikey Sherrill has struggled throughout the
Yeah.
whole campaign. Like, she still has not gotten minorities to vote for her. Their return on the mail-in ballots is 10% lower than whites. She lost the Jewish support that was for Governor Murphy. She's lost a number of Democratic defections in Hudson County, which is a very Democratic county that are supporting Chitterelli. Zoran at the same time is only gaining ground as time has gone on. And I talked to a Democrat consultant on this podcast a couple months ago, and he said to me, it's not a question of if a socialist will be the Democratic nominee for president. It's just a question of when. Do you come to that same opinion?
For president, you're saying?
For the nominee for president?
Yeah, I think it is likely, yes, in the short run, and I think the ultimate example of this is AOC, because I don't see how she does not run. Mark Halpern and I go back and forth about this. He's like, no way, no, she's not serious. She's not a top tier candidate. I'm like, she's got the energy. She's of the base. She's the intellectual kind of heart of the base right now. She's gonna have no problem raising money. So I think when you look at someone like Mandani, you look at someone like AOC, Bernie Sanders being another example, they're getting closer, right? Like Sanders, almost got it in 16, less so in 20. But right now, if I had to bet, AOC would start with 25% of the vote. I mean, she and Gavin Newsom will be the two front runners. You have a debate. My bet is she knocks him out more than more likely than he would knock her out, because she's got the substance and she's got the energy of the base behind her. So I don't know. Historically, we flirt, but then we kind of sober up right before, wedding day. Howard Dean, didn't ultimately get there. The same thing with Sanders in 16, Sanders and Warren in 20. We just don't have a history of ultimately going through. But kind of like Republicans, you don't until you do, right? And all of a sudden you get Trump, and like there it is. So it is possible. And I think some of these inner primary battles for the House, you're going to see more socialists after Mandani likely wins. I'm going to be curious about Jeffries. The rumor here in New York is he is going to endorse Mandani probably Friday afternoon, late.
Late, but Mandani is not endorsing Hochul.
No, and the word is that Mandani's looking for someone to primary.
Yeah, there's that gay black councilman from Andre Choi or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, we need to have this. Like, as much as it's painful for me, and as much as I roll my eyes at parts of our party, we need this fight. We need to have primaries. We need to have debates, and let everybody go at each other. I think we may ultimately, the socialists may win. I think in the long run they'll lose, but we need to stop putting a lid on it and saying we can't do this.
Now there is this guy, and I'm looking for his name. I can't, of course, because I just thought of this question. Now I'm blanking on his name. He's an Indian gentleman. He was the thought leader, really, behind AOC, and he is running against Nancy Pelosi.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. He was her chief of staff briefly.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
he was a chief of staff, and he was the one. He was the thought leader behind the Green New Deal. I mean, he
yep.
really thought of it and gave it to AOC, and she ran with it. I'm going to remember it 10 minutes after we stop talking. Um, but his name. But anyway, do you think AOC endorses against Nancy Pelosi endorses her former chief of staff?
I think she'll wait to see if Pelosi, announces she's going to step down. The word is here that she's going to do it right after the election. Someone I know close to her said when she leaves, she's going to go, meaning she'll announce on like Monday that I'm out on Friday. She's not going to
Well, why
say,
would she stay?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's not going to say I'm going to serve out the rest of this Congress and go out. So I don't know. I think it'll be a free for all. Reports are she's leaning towards this. I think it's a Korean American woman in San Francisco who's a city council woman. Is
Well,
kind
her
of
daughter wants to run.
Yeah, well, that's always been out there that she does. But this councilwoman apparently is who she may favor. It's going to be really interesting to see because AOC I think does face this fork in the road, which is she has in the last few years become more of an inside baseball player. She's kept her mouth kind of quiet about certain things where, she defended Joe Biden really to the end, which is something people don't talk much about. She was very loyal. I think that was a sign to the party. I say this because does she want to be Ted Kennedy, meaning a member of the House or the Senate, leadership for 40 years and try to have all this legislation that kind of bends the arc on various issues? Or does she say, sitting around here is a waste of my time. I'm going to go. This is my shot. Who knows in 5 years if I still have the energy and the base and everything. I'm going for president. And if I don't, I'm going to go get a contract on MSNBC and, be a pundit.
Well, she's also a woman of a particular age where, like, if she wants to have children,
Yep.
the window is shutting on it. There's a personal aspect to all these politicians of like, do I want to have some, I mean,
Yep.
politics is a drug. You don't want to ever stop it once it's there. There's nothing like a campaign night, even when, there's no adrenaline rush I've ever
Yep.
experienced like a campaign
Agreed.
night. But there's that aspect of like, does she want to have kids? Does she want to have a normal family in any capacity? Okay,
Yep.
my last question to you, because I know I'm trying to keep you over. So like in the last election, Democrats have really done very well with older voters. Older voters of when Bush was running, those voters have passed away, most of them. And then I always say Archie Bunker is dead, but Meathead is a senior citizen now. Like that's older voters now. Like they've changed.
Great analogy. Yeah.
So, but they've struggled with low propensity voters, minority men, people that would naturally be part of the Obama coalition.
Yep.
Has anyone worked to rectify that you see?
For some people that think the Obama coalition can be put back together, most people I talk to think we need a new coalition. And that I mean, you just take those tenets, right? Trump won young voters. We're struggling not only with black young men, Latinos. We've lost them just in general here. What is the new coalition? We've really become white collar services in the urban centers and kind of those tight suburban collars around a lot of areas is our base. And how do we kind of expand into other areas? Because on a macro level, Trump is making further inroads into blue areas, and we're getting further and further away from red areas.
Yeah,
And
Queens
so I think,
County is going to be a swing county one day.
yeah, I mean, trying to put the Obama coalition back together, I just don't. I think the Obama coalition contributed to our erosion with the white working class. It had started, before, but this focus on young people, minorities, and then liberals, right? The kind of wealthier people, that gap in between was not really sustainable without an incredibly talented, unique person like Barack Obama was. But even in 2012, as you know, he ground that thing out. I mean, there was no hope and joy. Those margins got much, much smaller. Like the trend lines were already beginning to move against him. And so I think we need a new coalition. And of course, part of this is, does the Trump coalition hold, going forward for JD Vance or whomever? Or do some of these voters come back up for grabs?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's something that I think a lot of Republicans are looking at in the midterms because they're drawing maps right now that are dependent on a Trump coalition. That if it flares out in any capacity, they might have drawn themselves into a dummy mander.
Yeah, it's
So
possible, particularly in Texas. Yep.
yeah. All right, where can people go to read more of your stuff? I could talk to you all day long, and I don't want
I'm
to hold
happy
you
to
up.
do it.
I know. Where can people go to read you more? I love you on two way, so you can give any of your plugs of social media to follow.
Yeah, no, two-way would be the best place. We are the morning meeting, which we are live from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. You can also, it's streamed, so you can catch it, whenever is convenient for you. And then I do something called the group chat on Thursdays at 4 o'clock live. Again, also on two-way, also streamed, so you can watch that too. Those are the two primary places. And then when given an invitation like you gave me, I'm always love to talk about this. I could do it all
Thank
night
you
myself.
for answering my DM, my anonymous DM on Twitter, and be like,
No,
please come on
not
my show.
anonymous
Not
whatsoever. I
anonymous, but
follow
my
you, so
unsolicited,
yes,
unsolicited.
yes.
Yeah.
It's always
Thank
my
you so much
pleasure.
for being here.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.